Hi, everybody, and welcome to Launch Day. I'm Eric Christian Olsen, and I am going to be the moderator to one of the most exciting moments in our professional and personal lives, which is that today is Pug Day. That's not true.
It's Pub Day.
Pub Day, which is lingo for publishing launch of a book day. And we are here to celebrate and talk about the Zen Mama Guide to Finding Your Rhythm in Pregnancy, Birth, and Beyond. We're with the authors, one of which happens to be my wife.
That's me.
And one of which happens to be my dear friend Teresa. And I could not be
other
more
wife.
My second wife that lives in another country. But I couldn't be more excited to be here to discuss this and celebrate this because it is a crowning and I can't wait to talk about it.
Thank you. We're so excited to have Eric here as our moderator to celebrate our book. And I'm so excited that Teresa was able to
Where are you, Teresa?
to make it.
I think I got here with about 10 minutes to spare.
You did.
I
might
show you guys what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a crop top that doesn't fit because of my belly. But I figured you guys are only really seeing this much, so that's how prepared I am. Bear with me. I also have a cough.
So now we all know. We all know because you just showed.
And now everyone knows.
Which is essentially a great segue into a book, which is
yes.
all the things that go beyond behind the scenes you bring light to and show
that's true.
And talk about so that we're not doing it alone.
That's true.
Can you tell us where you are real quick?
Yes, I'm in Estonia. I'm in a little tiny town called Viljandi in Estonia. And it's really cold. It snowed today. But it's good. I'm glad to be here. And it's so funny because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So actually we would be doing this live with a bunch of people in a real audience. So we're actually doing it virtually because of Corona life. And we've partnered with Premier Collectibles for this live signing. So thank you for having us, guys. And Sarah, there are signed copies available, right?
Yes. Yeah. You can actually get signed copies at premiercollectibles.com/Zen Mama. And that will be available, I think, anytime. Now.
It's kind of amazing because if they're otherwise you guys would be in small little bookstores everywhere, but you're doing this globally.
Which would also be very cool, but we're very excited to partner with Premier Collectibles and be able to do this globally because we're reaching so many people, which is really fun. And that's kind of what our community is all about, is being able to come together from wherever you are in the world. So the fact that we can do it this way is pretty cool.
Do you want to say
a shout out to Isabel? Hi, she's one of our fans of Your Zen Mama, and I know she's listening, so a big shout out to you.
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm going to say it again, premiercollectibles.com. Is that a backward slash? Or
/
Zen Mama. And those books can be sent any place in the world. And that's all the comments I got on Instagram were, can we get them now? And how? And this is the time to do it.
This is the way.
Can I jump into it? Can I start asking questions?
Hey, go.
Well, first off, let's go macro.
Okay.
And let's talk about two incredibly busy working actresses. You only have so much bandwidth. Why do you choose to write this book?
Because we're crazy. We were spread very thin, weren't we, Sarah? I think when we first were approached, we were just like, how are we ever gonna handle this? How can we manage this? Because, you know, as you said, we're both actors, and then we have families, we have a bunch of kids between us. We're both business owners and have lots of other things going on. But I think it was very flattering, wasn't it, to be approached by a publisher in Australia where we first launched the book. And initially it was really overwhelming. Sorry about my cough, not Corona. But I think we just decided to jump in the deep end because we felt inspired to bring this story to life because of our community. We've received so much from so many people who are probably watching now, and from our mentors, and we learned so much over the years that we thought, why don't we just jump in, give this a go, talk about all the things we've learned, and actually we'll probably do a lot of learning in the process. And it was such a beautiful experience.
And we did do a lot of learning in the process. And the first thing we learned is that it wasn't spam when they wrote us, because I really did think that it was spam, because they wrote us about like, oh, we'd love to talk about doing a book with you guys. And I was like, oh, this is so funny. I like forwarded it to Teresa. I was like, this is obviously not real, but it's a great joke. And then we were like, maybe we should write back to them. So it was, it's very exciting. And I agree with Teresa. I mean, honestly, this all came from passion, right? And you talk about the different things in your life that are important to you. And for Teresa and I, this was like, when we first met, this is what we were talking about, is how much we like wanted to have babies and become mamas. And
oh, I remember.
This was, that's right.
I was there.
Boyfriend. I was like, I have 20 children. And
that's right.
Like,
Teresa didn't have a boyfriend. I was with Eric. He was like, no, we are not doing this yet. He was like, let's get to our 20s and then maybe we can talk about it. Which I'm so thankful that you put the kibosh on that, because I would have been like, okay, let's go. But this was something that we were inspired by before we were mothers. And then, when we became mothers, it just became even more real and evident how much you need other people, other mamas and other parents in your life, and just a community to be inspired by and to share with and to relate with and share tragedies and fails and everything with. So that was, how Zen Mama came about, and then the book was birthed out of that.
Because Zen Mama,
the end of 2000.
You obviously haven't done research for your live stream. It started in 2014. Can you set the stage for us? Because I do want to say that when you were approached to do the Australian book, one of my favorite photos ever is you guys sending photos back and forth to each other while you were writing it and where you were writing it from. Can you kind of set the stage of what that looked like, kids-wise, work-wise, like the actual location of the writing?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was done for me on this very iPad in my notes section. So I had just this old, you should see what this iPad looks like. I mean, Eric and Sarah know me really well. I hardly ever upgrade any of my devices. So I think this one is from about 2011.
The Commodore 64.
Totally smashed, so gross. But I actually would write a lot of the book in the bath, pregnant with Poet. It would sit on my belly. I'd type away in notes. And then I went and had the baby. And then about a few weeks later, I decided to go on this road trip around America. And so it was in the back of an RV, and I would just lie in the back area with my baby, like in this little bouncer, so like bouncing around in the back of the RV. Probably not meant to do that. And my husband would just drive. He would just drive for 9-10 hours. And I'd be like, I'm up to chapter 9, I would get really excited. And Sarah was doing something similar, and we just sort of send our chapters back and forth and then add each other's voices to the chapters. But you're in an RV too, right?
Yes. Well, when we first started writing the book, I remember like our very first phone call with our publisher. I was on an airplane coming back from Toronto, and I was shooting a show there. And I remember like being like waiting for the plane to take off, but still like being on the call, because we like just all the schedules had to line up, because you were in Wales and she was in Australia and I was in Canada. And I just remember the excitement of that moment of just like, wow, this is real. We're going to start this. And I started writing the book when I was on the plane, and then we wrote throughout the summer. And and then when we did the US version, I was pregnant in an Airstream outside of a barn in Idaho, being like, I don't have any Wi-Fi, but I'm sort of doing a hotspot off of my phone. And then I'd be like, I'm going into the forest today for 6 hours. I can jump on a call as we're coming out of the forest.
There's no reception in the forest.
And no,
in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, in the middle of a pandemic, it's 8 months pregnant. So that's how we did it. And the reason we were able to do it that way is because this is what we love to talk about the most.
Yeah, that's the hustle. That is the hustle, where hustle meets passion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing. I didn't have pictures of it. I wish there were, but the pictures of you guys in your writing locations in the book. But know that's what that background looks like. of you with the motif of just like that RV, and it was like dark. You're on like that
or on set.
couch. Yeah.
We were in the same, you and I were in the same location for 1 week the entire time. And most of that week, your husband was in Germany. And so we actually didn't get to write until the last day and a half of you being there. And we spent an entire day writing the whole day.
Kids up some mountain. And remember, they found something at the top of the mountain. Brody still talks about it. Yeah, and I remember.
Oh yeah, we took him to the top of Grand Targhee. There was snow, and then of course.
Lift or something. I can't quite remember. But the men were like, all right, we got this. We're holding it down. We're going to take all the kids out. So like Mark, I think we kept the baby. We kept the baby.
We kept the baby.
And then the boys just sort of took the kids out, and we spent a full day. And I think we did all of chapter 8, or the majority of chapter 8 that day, which is our last chapter in the book. And so that it was just pretty epic. But I think it sums up sort of the heartbeat of our book, which is just like the peaks and the valleys, embracing the chaos and the craziness of it all. And so that was very much a part of our story. And I think it kind of bleeds through into the words. But it was such an enjoyable experience. And now it just feels very surreal having the book out to everyone globally. And it's exciting, and the feedback's been really lovely. So thank you, everyone.
Do you want to talk about, because you said it earlier, which is a great question, is that how much you were going to learn in the process? What did you discover was the most surprising thing you learned through this writing process?
Well, I knew how similar we were. I think we're very like-minded. I think, Eric, you always say that, like, you and Sarah, you guys parent so similarly. And it's true, we do. We're so on the same page. But I found the writing process with Sarah to be really effortless because we have such similar voices. But, so we would tackle one chapter each. And so one of the chapters Sarah wrote was chapter 3, I think it is. Yes, pregnancy. And it's such an epic chapter. And even now, I am pregnant with my 4th baby. I'm still picking up this book, going through the pregnancy chapter and being like, oh my God, I didn't realize that I'm not getting enough vitamins. And I love what Sarah wrote about that particular thing. And so it's just the sort of book that I keep coming back to. And even I opened it recently. I was navigating a toddler tantrum. And our last chapter in the book, we really talk about conscious parenting and gentle discipline. And we have these little segments where we give scenarios of what you could potentially say in certain situations with your children that are challenging. And I tapped back into it, and I was reminded, oh my gosh, this is so important. And so I'm still learning, even though we've finished the book, I'm still going back over it and reminding myself. And I love that. I love that the life continues, which is really nice.
Yeah, I would say that that's very similar for me, just being able to go back and read the words and learn from each other. And, during the process itself, I know that when we were writing, we were also researching so much. I mean, I would stay up late at night, reading studies and articles, and we would reach out to different doctors and be like, well, what do you think about this? And it was fascinating, some of the statistics that we learned, and one of which was that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in pregnancy loss. And that was like, whoa. And Teresa was writing our pregnancy loss chapter, when we were doing the book, because she had experienced pregnancy loss. And we both felt really strongly that it should be in Teresa's voice because of that. And so I did a little disclaimer at the beginning, and I said that that I was going to come from the perspective of being a friend who was there for someone who had experienced pregnancy loss. And then when we were editing that chapter of the book, I actually had a pregnancy loss. So talk about something that, a book that you're learning from. I Teresa was like, you should go back and read that chapter. And I was like, oh, of course. And I picked it up and started reading the words, and that held me through my entire experience. And also it guided me and taught me like what, how to take care of myself, and that I wasn't alone. It showed me that I wasn't alone, and that, this was something that happens to a lot of women, and that I'm going to be okay. And there's, hope at the other end. So, that was such a profound experience for me, just having that loss, and then being able to go back to the book. And, and I think that was sort of our intention when we were writing, was that this is a book that we were kind of looking for when we were becoming new mothers, which is like, if you're just deciding that you are thinking about having a baby, you can pick up this book. If you are already pregnant, you can pick up this book. If you've experienced a loss, you can pick up this book. And the book doesn't leave you out if you've experienced a loss. Like, Teresa says that, in a lot of pregnancy books, she would be reading them, and then when she experienced do you want to talk about that? I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, no, when I had my loss back in 2015, I had what's called a molar pregnancy. And we write about this very specifically in the book, because that's something that we really wanted to do, was not just talk about pregnancy loss generally. We wanted to tap into all the different types of pregnancy loss. I didn't even know at the time that there could be all these different forms in which you can lose your. But I remember when I went through mine, I had excitedly got out my pregnancy books again, that I had with Bodhi, 2 years earlier. And I was reading them all, and I was like, oh, this week I'm 7 weeks pregnant. And then all of a sudden that gets ripped away from me, and I no longer get to be reading the book. I felt like I was kicked out of this club all of a sudden, and there was nothing in any of these books that held me and told me it was going to be okay. And if there was anything, it was so teeny tiny, like, oh, chances are low, don't stress about it. Anyway, so about week 8, and I remember just feeling so alone and so isolated. I didn't know anyone else who'd gone through pregnancy loss, and I had told everyone I was pregnant at 4 weeks pregnant. And I sort of sheepishly had to put away my pregnancy books again, and get out my fertility books, and text all the people I told, like, oh, actually it's not going to work out. And it was just such a really lonely time for me. And I think that when I look back on it, I really wish I could go back and give myself the gift of a chapter like this, because I just sort of thrust myself back into work and bulldozed through all my feelings. And of course, over the next year or two, they manifested themselves in so many different ways. And I was noticing where they were coming out. And that's why I think, cut to however many years later, Sarah's going through this experience. She so beautifully honored that experience. And I think you went through such an amazing grieving process. And also, about grief. You've experienced grief in other forms before. And I just think the way in which you honored that baby and that experience was so profound. And I would love to have you write a story about that time period. And even if we ever do book 2, just having a chapter talking about that, because I wish I knew that was an option after I had my loss.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is a great idea.
And it's also, it needs to be said again, and it's someone from an outside perspective, is that like what we do in this business and what we do as storytellers is try to find the commonality of the human experience. And through sharing these types of stories, and I think Sarah said it in a quote about reading this chapter after we had a pregnancy loss, is the great comfort that she got from knowing that she wasn't alone. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you, like, I have a question, which is, what is the book what is the chapter that's the most difficult? And right afterwards, the question was, what is the chapter that's the most rewarding and necessary? And I think that this is a perfect example of that, because these stories are not told. And when they're not told, we're left to battle with them alone and in the darkness. And you guys telling new stories, I think is so beautiful and profound, and there's great humanity in that. So I celebrate both of you and your honesty and vulnerability within that context.
Oh, thanks, Eric. And it's funny that for me, the answer to both those questions is that same chapter.
Yeah.
That's the most profound chapter for me, but it's also the most challenging chapter. But I will say it's the one that, in terms of the feedback for the book, it's the one that gets mentioned every time, every interview. Every person who has read it so far around the world brings it up with us. They say thank you, even if they haven't experienced a loss themselves. It just helps them to better understand what that process is like for so many women, 1 in 4 women. So I feel really excited that we pushed for that, because I think the first time round when we mentioned it to our publisher, there probably was a little bit of pushback. Do we need an entire chapter, an entire 10,000 words dedicated to this?
And Teresa was like, yes, we do.
I was like, the answer is yes. And here's why. And it was so wonderful, because they really were like, thank you so much. We learned something during this process, how important it is. And I think now everyone can see, just how imperative it is to be so open and willing to be vulnerable and share your stories. And so, yeah, thank you for that question.
There's a section in there too that talks about pregnancy after loss, which I think is really important. It's a very important topic to cover as well. And, so if you've gone through pregnancy loss, or if you are pregnant, or if you are in your postpartum period, or if, you're experiencing that, what kind of parent do I want to be now the baby's here? What am I doing? There's just, that's what we set out to do when we wrote this book, is we wanted to cover all of those really important moments that is your mothering or parenting journey.
Absolutely.
I think, we jumped into chapter 2, but I think it would be a good use of our time. It's already 11:22 while we're flying. Is to do that and go through all the chapters and talk about what it is the header, what it is that we can take away from that, and just give people a blueprint for where they're headed when they order and read this book. So I think we should strap on our yoga pants and dive in.
You want to?
That's a direct quote from you, Teresa. I'm sure that's your line.
I've got it in front of me too.
Strap on our yoga pants and jump in is actually Teresa's line.
I said that I knew it was Teresa's line. Strap on your yoga pants and dive in.
That's right.
You want to talk about pregnancy prep?
Yeah, chapter 1.
What are we going to find in chapter 1? What are the things that we're investigating and talking about?
It's also just that first moment of deciding, like, all right, we're jumping in. This is a journey we want to take. And what does that look like? How does that feel? What are those conversations like with your partner? You can have sort of like a checklist of things, like, what should we communicate about before starting to try for a family? And also, pregnancy prep is interesting for us because we also delve into fertility and getting your body ready to house a little baby. I went through secondary infertility, so I went through that after Bodhi when I was trying to get pregnant with Forrest, and I had that loss. It was about 14 months, which is relatively short when it comes to infertility, but still, I was in the throes of a challenge when looking at that little tester, and it was negative month after month after month after month.
Yes.
But again, I just think mentally and physically, I just wasn't in a place to be willing to accept the information and accept the situation that was happening to me. I just thought, I've had a healthy baby, I should be able to just get pregnant again. And so our chapter 1, we talk about just honoring the journey and nurturing your body, getting it ready, moving your body, doing things like acupuncture, which is something that really helped me when I was really stressing about not getting pregnant. I decided to find a doctor who, first of all, just told me to go and meditate and really like let go of my control surrounding needing to get pregnant again. And that was a big part of it for me. But then also just working with my uterus and prepping it and getting it ready, and lessening the amount that I think there was such a toll on my body from breastfeeding. And I hadn't really nurtured myself. And so this is what chapter 1 really is about, is like, how do you nurture yourself? And what do those conversations look like? And also just preparing you. You might get pregnant that first month, but it might actually take you longer than you expect. And then if it does take longer than 6 months, at what point do you go to your doctor and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, like maybe we need a little extra help?
One of my favorite parts of that in your section was that you released yourself from the logistics of it and just doubled down on the life that you had, and committing that time to Bodhi and saying this is being grateful for what it is. And once that pressure was off your body.
Yeah, I liberated myself from the pressure of I need to have a second child. And then that month, by the way, was a month that I conceived my healthy rainbow baby.
So it wasn't the month that Mark carried you up the steps upside down?
It wasn't that month, no.
I laughed out loud the first time.
I was like, don't let any spill out. Oh my God. I was like, prop my legs up. Like, it was nuts. And he was like, this isn't enjoyable anymore. This isn't making love to have a baby. He's like, this feels like boot camp. I hate this. Like, we are never doing this again. I was like, please, I need a baby. It's just
nothing sexier than please, I need a baby. Part of me I'm so like, I believe in an organization and how you the lists. I love all that stuff. That's how my brain works. And so I also love that you guys go into finances and support network and food, the letter that Sarah wrote to the insurance company. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about, so much of this book is about trusting your instincts, and you leaving your first OBGYN.
Yeah. And, I did. I was going to have a hospital birth with the OBGYN that I was with. I'm from Kentucky and I was living in LA, and I had, had a referral to go to this OBGYN, and I got pregnant, and then I started talking to her about it. And she always had a very cold demeanor. And I always felt like when I walked in, she would pick up her chart and she'd be like, hi, Sarah.
Wright.
And I'd be like,
no, I've met you 15 times.
I'd be like, yes, that's me. How are you? How are your children? And she I just never felt connected to her. And then I remember talking to my friend, Dr. Berlin, about it, and he's a chiropractor. And, I was already 4 months pregnant at this point, and he was like, I'm sorry, why are you going to have your baby with her? And I was like, well, that's who I'm with. But he's like, that's not how it works. You can go and you can be with anyone. Like, this is your birth, And I was like, oh yeah. Okay. And so, I did, I went and met with a whole bunch of people, and then I loved this midwife. And so I had my first baby with a midwife at home, and then I met this amazing doctor, OBGYN, Dr. Gordon, and I had my next 2 babies with him. So yeah, I think, if you can meet, care providers and make it like dating and see who it is. Hey you.
And he's Goldberg's the best. I'm with him now with this number 4. And he's just got such a great manner, and he just knows his stuff, and he's also just so personable, which I really love. You should adore your doctor. You should feel so comfortable with them. Yeah. Because that's the person who's going to see you in your most vulnerable, animalistic, it's true intimacy, and you want to feel completely comfortable with whoever's going to be your birth care provider. But yeah, that's such an interesting story. Good for you for advocating for yourself, even with your first baby.
It was information. Right. That's the other thing too, is like reading that, reading what he's bringing that back up, is that it's information. I didn't know. I wasn't informed. And
two Midwest kids, you just do what the doctors tell you.
Yeah.
And if you're cold, angry OBGYN who doesn't look up from her, what's that thing called? A clipboard.
Chart.
Clipboard.
Sarah.
Yeah.
All of a sudden she became a weird
amazing.
gremlin. Pregnancy loss. We just talked about that.
Yes.
One of the most important chapters written in a long time about from you guys. Chapter 3, pregnancy.
Yes. So chapter 3.
Sarah, baby, this one.
My baby, this chapter.
Chapter 3 is Sarah. She wrote this from the back of the airstream.
Feelings about this chapter.
Yeah, this is a monster. I just remember writing Teresa because I always had like, we would give ourselves a deadline and I'd be like, okay, I know my deadline is Thursday, just so you know, this is a monster. And but it was great. And you know what? I love it because there's so much information in here.
So much information.
This goes through sharing the news with your partner, sharing the news with your work, just kind of going in and you know, checking what is the what's in your contracts about, you know, your job and if you have to bring up the news to them. And, you know, it's just, all of it is prepping you to advocate for yourself. You know, there's doula information in here.
Nutrition,
which is also really amazing, is it kind of preps you with different kinds of foods that there's like the go-to foods and the no-no foods, and getting your home ready, you know, with like non-toxic,
which
that's
is
what
what
non-toxic luncheon. I think that should be talked about.
Yeah.
A whole couple pages from her, who's an amazing.
Our wonderful friend Aida Garcia. She runs. I know, right? You like that? I've heard her say it a million times, so I'm like, I can say it just like that.
I can't.
She writes this awesome part of this chapter, and she puts in a lot of home remedies, personal care home remedies, making your own house cleaners and stuff like that, so that you're not buying like all these chemicals, but instead you're just using things that we already have in our home, like vinegar and baking soda. So there's a lot of tips like that in here, and it goes through the weeks. This is something that I loved when I was pregnant, is being able to go through the weeks. Okay, it's week 6 to 9 now. This is what you can for and prep for, and
this is like what size fruit your baby is this week. I'm a mango this
or
week.
Are
you a mango this week?
I'm a mango. My belly looks like it's more like a watermelon. But
wait, what week are you right now?
I'm 20. So I may have
You're
switched
20
from
weeks?
Ooh, 21 weeks is when I recorded Goodnight Moon for Wyatt.
In our book, in 20 weeks, it says this is about the time when fruit comparison lovers would say that your baby's the size of a pear, but we're going to tell you that your baby is the size of a chipmunk.
Yes, I wake up to a chipmunk.
That was one of my favorite Teresa references, when you said something's about to go pear shape, and I was like, what does that mean?
That is cool. That's very Australian. Sorry, down under.
Yep, and then we end up going through. This is actually the chapter when I talk about writing.
Insurance company.
Yeah, writing a letter to the insurance company.
Yes,
company. That's right.
To the insurance company to advocate for getting my home birth paid for. And you know, there's always ways around certain things, but you never will have that opportunity if you don't advocate for yourself. So
I also like lists. So you had a hospital list, which I think was really helpful.
Oh yeah,
because
like packing your
traveling, I always print out some sort of list to go through and hit it all.
That's this, packing your hospital bag. So there's like ideas in here for mama, for baby. Also just, you know, we
interviewing doulas,
which is huge in our opinion. We love it.
Listening to your body, taking lots of naps, because during your first trimester, I especially with Wyatt, because we didn't at that point, we didn't have any kids, I would come home and find Sarah wrapped up in a ball, surrounded by both dogs next to the fireplace, just for like a month and a half.
I was always so cold.
So cold and so tired. I was like, is this normal? And she's like, I don't know. We haven't written the book yet. I have no idea if this is normal.
I later had to be on iron supplement. I was definitely a bit anemic, but
I'm always anemic in my pregnancies. Nice. I actually got one of those what are those blood things called? I got one.
What?
The infusion? Oh,
the infusion. I'm gonna say transfusion. I was like, I know it's not transfusion.
An infusion.
I got that last last pregnancy, and I'm definitely going to have to get one again.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it. I'm really feeling
Wow.
it. And of course, you know, I've had like lots of people be like, it's because you're vegan. And I was like, it's not. It happened to me when I was eating meat and I was still eating fish in my first 2 pregnancies. This just happens to me. Like some people that just happens to.
How do they say it again? Do the impersonation again.
It's because you're vegan.
Are they an actual gremlin, or who said that?
Actually, they are. Anyone
They are
who
actual
doesn't
gremlins.
being vegan is a
I
gremlin.
love it.
I do want to say too that I'm glad you included this because it makes my heart so happy. When at 21 weeks, I did record Goodnight Moon, and then she would play it on her iPhone when I was working late and I couldn't be there at the same time at bed every single night for Wyatt, because that's when you told me that
They can hear.
And so when Wyatt, we finally after that birth happened, and that's a whole story unto itself that's in there. But I remember the doulas and everybody left, and I had Wyatt on my chest, and I was just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And he's crying, and Sarah's passed out with like a broken rib and everything else. And I was just like,
broken.
I mean, it just popped off. It's not big.
Oh, it feels like
It popped out.
Yeah.
It popped
Just popped out.
I had an uneven chest.
And he was crying, and I just said, "Goodnight, Moon," and immediately, like, that connection was established. That's something he had heard for like the last 2 months while he was in the womb, and he's now into the world, and it's all unknown. And I started saying that in the same tone, and that connection, I think, made such a huge difference.
And they've been connected from day one, which is just so cool. But yeah, that was a huge thing for him. And that night when I was seeing like triple vision and going to bed, and he really did, everyone left and Eric was alone with the baby, which, you know, didn't have any experience around babies. So he's terrified. He's been awake for 36 hours or something at this point. And so I'm like, I pieced out, I fell asleep. And he was, you know, awake, just staring at this baby, like saying "Goodnight, Moon" over and over again. And
Goodnight, Moon.
I know.
It's over and over. Just
I read the whole book. At that point, I had it memorized. But I do think it's really important from a partnership standpoint, because there isn't a lot that guys can do, especially early in that process.
Yeah.
So if you have any ability to soothe the baby, and I think that comes from the baby feeling something that they recognize, I do think it's a great way to play a role early in the birth of that baby.
Yes.
Yeah. Should we talk about birthing power?
Yes. Let's talk about birthing power, because we want to make sure we get to questions.
My baby.
Oh my God, it's 11:40.
No, it's 11:38.
That's the same thing. Mine's 2 minutes.
No, he always ups
Every
time.
does. So this is my baby, birthing power.
Yes, this is baby.
I think this might be my favorite chapter to have written.
Oh, she
It
froze.
was the most enjoyable. Have I frozen?
No, you're
keep
good
going.
now. You're good now.
Back. So I think this was my most enjoyable chapter to write. I love birth. I love it. I just find it obviously so intense. It's one of the most intense experiences, maybe the most intense experience that you can go through. However, I have had 3 births so far, going to be doing another one relatively soon. And I just wish I had a book like this, a chapter like this, going into my first birth. I read a lot of Ina May Gaskin. I read lots of amazing books. However, the thing that I didn't read about is letting it all go. So I prepped myself. I had all the things in order. I knew exactly the birth positions I thought I would like, all the different ways in which I could soothe myself if the contractions were getting too intense. But what I didn't know was that you can go into birth with an expectation, but if you don't free yourself from that expectation, you'll be beholden to that experience. And actually, if you're feeling tight and in control, your body's doing the same thing and you're not able to fully open up. And that was my experience. And Sarah was there with me for my first birth, and I was trying to control lots of aspects of it, like, all right, now I'm going to try this. And like, how far along am I? Okay, I think I'm going to move down the list. I'm going to do this checklist. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do, and I didn't just sort of surrender, which is Sarah's key word in birth is surrender, which I think is such a beautiful word. And I ultimately ended up having a home birth transfer. I tore, I had assisted pushing, which is just basically where someone's like, push, when I wasn't ready to push. I just listened to the doctors because I had been in labor for 2 days straight at that point, and I was so exhausted. So I just listened to what they said. I was lying on my back, all the things I didn't want to do, all the things I had read not to do. And of course I tore, and I had a retained placenta. And now looking back, having this knowledge and having written this chapter with Sarah, I realized that, the little missing piece for me was just the let go portion of it. And we talk about that so much in this chapter, visualization of the birth, but again, breaking up with the idea of the perfect birth, embracing the experience. If you have to have an emergency cesarean because that is safest for you and your baby, embracing that experience and saying what's best is a healthy outcome for mama and for baby. And just being able to pivot, just pivoting in birth all the time. I think that that's what birth is about. And so of course, for me, that chapter was just, not only was it therapeutic and healing in some ways to write it, it's just so informative. It's so informative. And I've been reading it over and over. Now that I'm getting close, I'm like, oh my God, I know I've done this 3 times before, but still, I need to just have all the information and then let it go.
This is also the chapter where we have a lot of our friends contribute pieces of their birth story. Daniela Rua is one person, Megan Gale is another person, Nikki Reed is another person. It's just so amazing to have those friend stories in here, because it really does show you between our stories and their stories, there's just so many different ways that birth goes.
That's important to say, because it really is about embracing the process. Have, Danny's was a breech birth, Megan's was with an epidural, cesarean births, which I didn't know was 32% of all births. And you go through and talk about all these different types of birth and celebrate, embrace all of them, which I think is really important.
Yes.
Absolutely. And then, the toolkit for us, our go-to toolkit on how to birth and manage just the intensity and the big feelings that you have. And, it's a mental war, I think. There are times when you're like, this is too much, but then you're getting in your own way. So we talk about all the things that we lean on, utilizing water, movement is a big thing, vocalization, visualization, birthing balls, birth partner. What does your birth team look like? We talk about that. Who's going to be in the room with you? Because that's so important too. I mean, if you're going to feel planned up because your mum's over there watching you, then you're not going to have mum at the birth. So that's what we talk about in this chapter.
You also differentiate. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm looking at the time and saying, okay, for the next, I was just going to say, go ahead. And
well, I was just going to say that it's good you differentiate between the difference between medical convenience and what it is the best path for you and your baby. And I really love that chapter. Not that chapter, that specificity.
The next chapter is chapter 5. It's postpartum, but I was just going to say that.
You want to talk about your body?
5.
Chapter 5 is your body.
5, 6, and 7 are actually all postpartum, and what it is they're broken up into body, mind, and baby, because there are 3 very distinctive parts of postpartum, which is you're dealing with everything that's happening in your body, everything that goes on in your mind, and then everything that you're learning about your new baby. And so we thought that they all really needed to have their own separate chapter.
Exactly.
Should we go through the hit list?
We have time to go into them, or should we just go into questions?
Maybe we should go into questions.
Maybe we should go into questions, because I think we have an hour total. So.
And then they cut you off.
And then we go. It was be awkward.
Sent you back to the goblins.
Because you're vegan. Yes. But really quick, while we're opening the questions, Teresa, do you want to tell them about what chapter 8 is about? And then we'll.
Yeah, babyhood and beyond. So it's not just giving birth, having your little newborn there. It's after that, you know, what happens after your baby's one. And we talk about, you know, some specific things and like what to expect in those years after you've had your baby, but also like very specifically conscious parenting, gentle discipline, how to stay with your partner, because it's really challenging when you have kids and you're thrown in the deep end and your relationship can take a beating. So we talk a lot about you know, just nurturing that, knowing each other's love language, having each other's, my husband and I say, each other's user manual, and then self identity. Who is the woman behind the mother? Leaning into that notion of you were a person before your baby, and trying to keep that alive, self-care, all those sorts of things. So that is chapter 8, which we're excited maybe in another book we might expand on that.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, that's
one of the first questions from Tiffany, which is one of my favorites. It talks about self-care, about getting off of Instagram. Where did it go? Oh, what are your suggestions dealing with mom guilt when you need a day of self-care? I know it's an important part of being a balanced mother, but I find it difficult to get away without worrying about their safety, letting myself relax without feeling bad that I'm not with them. This is something universally that everyone feels.
Yes, and Teresa actually has a really great way of describing this when she talks about her garden, and I think this is a great visual for everyone here. Go for it.
I'm excited.
Thanks. Yeah, so I talk about a garden and having 10 plants. You're only allowed 10 plants in your garden. What are those 10 plants in the garden? Are they self-care? Are they spirituality? Are they relationships, kids, working out, nutrition, whatever it is? You figure out what your 10 things in your life are, and you break up with being a yes person. And I think that can be really challenging because a lot of us by nature are yes people. Do you want to do this? Oh yeah, okay. Like, hey, could you host this thing? Sure. Thanks, Eric. But
overcommitting. I read this chapter. As an overcommitter.
I know. But it's only taking on what you actually can. And when you break up with this yes person, actually you're saying yes to yourself, which is so incredibly important, because we talk about you're the trunk of the tree and the branches are all these other aspects in your life. But if the trunk isn't fulfilled and nurtured and taken care of, the tree's going to fall apart. So that's definitely something that we talk a lot about. So just finding it, and we have in the last chapter, we actually talk about, can you carve out 20 minutes in a day? If you can, here are some suggestions. Sometimes people just need some suggestions on how to take care of themselves. Take a bath, go for a walk, have coffee with a friend, listen to a true crime podcast like what I do. Figure out what your non-negotiable is, and tell your partner that, and ensure that they're honoring that for you, and liberate yourself from that mum guilt. We all have it. I get it. But actually, happy mama equals happy baby. And you're going to want to show your kids that it's okay for you to show up for yourself. That's a lesson in life that you want to teach them.
That's right. Very cool. I love that.
That is a really good answer. Any tips on staying calm while preparing for my 3rd fertility treatment? The anxiety is getting the best of me. That's from Veronica in Florida. I can't turn off the what if thoughts.
I hear you, girl. I didn't do fertility. Well, I did a couple. I did an IUI. But I remember my husband telling me that I had actually gone psycho because my obsession reached an all-time high. And honestly, I think my only real suggestion for you is just like, get present, love yourself, honor yourself, understand that, the process can be long. It can be really arduous. Find that community of mothers. There are so many online who are also navigating infertility. There are so many. In fact, I follow some of them because I find just the way they come together, so inspiring. And oftentimes I'll comment, and I love seeing just the support and the camaraderie in these communities. So find your people to talk to, write your feelings down, and just, continue to be hopeful, taking care of yourself, and try and quieten the committee, which is what I call this up here, the little committee in your mind. Quieten it, and just take care of yourself.
And it's not, it's not something that necessarily goes away. There's all different types of stress and anxiety that comes up during pregnancy and in postpartum. And so throughout your whole journey, this is a really good time to start learning what your toolkit is and what's going to help you to regulate and feel good. And we showed our kids this, there's this app that's coming out. I think it's called Ziva Kids. And we showed them about, it's about like meditation and just sort of how to calm the things inside of us. But I told Teresa, like, this works so well for me because the visual is so beautiful. It's like she talks about how the stormies come in and there's like this like rain cloud of storms. And but the thing to know, which I thought was so beautiful, is that if you go above the clouds, like if you've ever been on a flight and you're flying up and you're in the storm and then you get above the clouds, the sun is always shining. And so you got to know that like inside there's this stuff that comes up and it makes us feel so tight and so scared and so anxious. But if we can take some deep breaths and kind of calm ourselves through that and allow the sun to shine through, then, that can be so helpful. And she just talks about taking 3 deep breaths and trying to see when the stormies pass. Right?
No, that's exactly it. Really well said. Filling up the balloon with your favorite carrot cake and exhaling.
Blowing out your birthday candle.
It's so when you watch your kid do those breathing exercises for the first time.
Feels really good.
I cry all the time. But
my birthday candles are always about, there's only 27 on my birthday cake when I'm blowing them out.
But that's not how old you are.
You don't though. It's really weird.
That calms my anxiety.
That was one of my favorite chapters about Teresa. She's like, and all of a sudden they're coming out with balance boards while I'm shooting my TV show to fill in the dark circles, like motherhood and what it looks like for people working in this industry.
But all the bounce, all the lights.
Give me all the lights.
Yeah.
Give me everything you got. All of it.
How do you find a rhythm of co-parenting with your husband when he's the one outside working? Well, you guys are both working, so that's not really.
Well, you do work outside, so
especially during a pandemic.
During a pandemic,
she makes me sleep in the garage.
Home. I think that there's a lot of times there can be resentment when one person goes out all day and is working and they feel like, okay, I've been working all day, I need to come home and unwind. I heard this so much during Mommy and Me classes too. And then you're at home all day and you're working too. You are cooking and cleaning and taking care of kids. And I read this thing one time where it's like the meals have been cooked, the house has been cleaned, the kids have been fed, I kept them alive, like I crushed it, and it's so true. Like you're both doing so much. And if you don't communicate what your needs are, then there will be resentment there. So co-parenting, like husbands sometimes will come home or partners will come home and they'll be like, I just need my time for myself. And you're like, that's so great. And I know that and love that about you, but I also need time for myself. So we have to figure out what does that look like for us? Yeah.
Yeah. That's that non-negotiables thing I think we talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. It's just all about communication really, isn't it? And in our household, we've actually broken up. All right, what are all the household duties? What are the parenting duties? All right, let's say there's 50 of them. All right, these are the ones I take, you take those ones. These are the ones that we can, disperse amongst the children depending on their ages. And then it's like a team, and just a big team, and we're all in it together and we know what our duties are. And so, you'll sometimes sway from them, but it's all about communication. And yeah, I think that's true.
Do you have that in a list form? Do you have that available? Like, do you have a list of that? Because I love a list. And if we can do some checklists.
I'll send you what we've got. I've got it on my blackboard at home.
Eric's the big cleaner in our house.
We have a rock and roll list.
Laundry. He cleans, he vacuums.
Well, no,
Oh my
in the
God,
morning now
that's
we have
me.
rock and roll list where the kids do the dog food and there's vacuuming and everybody has participation. And really it's about communication and ownership is once they understand what their roles are. But so that's a good example to transition. It's a good way to segue into the next question, which is that, are you guys going to write another book? And if you are, what is something you're excited to tackle?
Yes.
We've been talking so much about this and we're really excited. We just did outlines recently.
New ideas. But we would love to tell stories of mothers from all over the world. We want to go to all the different countries, all the different cultures, and really delve into sort of birth stories and birth culture from around the world. That is something we're really, really excited to do. So that's an idea.
Docu-series and a podcast.
Yes.
All of the above.
Book, podcast, docu-series.
And then, yeah, absolutely. I mean, birth is our favorite. So that's definitely something that we want to do. And we want to learn about birth from all over the world, from all different walks of life, cultures, and just what that looks like. So that's really exciting for us.
Yeah. That is our time for today. What else should we talk about?
Yes.
4 minutes. Do you want to say anything to the people that are here?
Conclusion, Eric.
In conclusion. I want to steal any time that you can use for conclusion.
No, I do want to say that if you want an autographed copy, you can get it at premiercollectibles.com/Zen Mama. You can find all this information on our website as well. Our book is available wherever books are sold. And we also recorded the Audible audio. Yeah, which is so exciting. We just did it recently. I just listened to a little piece of it this morning because it's finally out as our first.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I too animated.
What'd you say?
I said, I hope you don't judge how animated I was.
No, it was wonderful.
If it wasn't animated, it wouldn't be you.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the things we love about you.
There's a resource guide in the back of our book.
This brings me great joy because when I travel, I would take like Lonely Planet, which gives me all the details. This is the Lonely Planet of pregnancy planning.
It has websites, podcasts,
everything.
It has everything, all of our favorite books, brands, just whatever it is that we've loved.
Funny brand that we love. Yeah.
That's right.
It's a community. It's a community that it empowers you to make this the best version of.
And guys, thank you for being a part of that community and joining us and hearing us about our book, baby.
Thank you all so much for joining us, for being here. We're so grateful. And Eric for being our host today.
Being our #1 fan.
We're gonna do this every week.
Let's do it every week.
55 versions of this until it's New York Times bestseller.
There you go.
Lots of love.
I celebrate you, Sarah. I celebrate you. I celebrate this wonderful book.
And we celebrate all of you guys.
And I celebrate, the community that you guys have built together and how empowering it is to everybody, to mothers, to fathers. And I think that, the commonality of the human experience, you guys crushed it. And I couldn't be more excited and proud of you both.
Thank you,
Eric. Bye, everyone, wherever you are in the world.
Bye, everybody.
You just hang out now.
I was like,
Double goodbye. You say goodbye.